The palace east corridor was quiet when Royal Guard Daniel Mercer noticed a notification on the wall security tablet beside Princess Charlotte's study. A message request had been logged from the child's secure learning console, but it was not addressed to her tutors or attendants. The encrypted tag simply read, "For guard only." Mercer frowned. Charlotte had never used the system this way before. Then a second alert appeared on the screen. Someone inside the palace had tried to erase the message.
The corridor outside Princess Charlotte's learning suite remained quiet under the soft evening lights when Royal Guard Daniel Mercer noticed the notification flicker across the small security tablet mounted beside the door. The palace network normally filtered student messages through automated review before allowing them to appear on the corridor consoles, but this alert looked different, short, direct, and flagged for deletion. Mercer tapped the screen just as the system countdown began clearing the entry from the log. The message opened briefly on the display before disappearing from the console memory. Charlotte had written only one sentence: "Please check the hallway tablet before anyone else arrives." Mercer frowned slightly. Messages from the royal children were rarely directed toward security personnel unless part of a scheduled safety drill, and there were no drills listed in the evening schedule. He quickly accessed the console's temporary buffer, retrieving the encrypted message fragment before the automatic purge finished clearing the system. The console displayed the timestamp from Charlotte's learning desk only 30 seconds earlier. That meant she had sent the message while still inside the room. Mercer turned his attention to the biometric door panel beside him. The indicator showed the suite was still sealed and occupied, exactly as expected during the princess's independent study period. Through the door, he could faintly hear the soft sound of the digital learning screen inside the room continuing its reading program. Charlotte was still working. Nothing appeared disturbed. Yet the message remained unusual enough that Mercer followed her instruction immediately. He opened the corridor tablet's system dashboard and pulled up the internal supervision log attached to the learning suite. The log normally tracked the presence of tutors, aides, or authorized staff while a royal child used the room. In almost every case, the status simply read "supervised during lessons" or "secure" when the child studied alone with the automated monitoring system active. Mercer scrolled slowly through the recent entries. Everything looked routine until one short line caught his attention near the top of the log. For exactly 12 seconds earlier that evening, the system had recorded Princess Charlotte's status as unattended. Mercer stared at the entry again, reading it carefully. Inside the palace children's wing, that status should never appear. The entire corridor was protected by overlapping supervision protocols designed to ensure that a royal child was always monitored either by staff, guard presence, or automated security oversight. Even if Charlotte was studying independently, the system normally registered her as supervised through the palace network itself. Yet the log clearly showed that brief classification change before returning to normal status again. Mercer leaned slightly closer to the tablet, opening the deeper system detail behind the entry. The 12-second window had been recorded only 3 minutes earlier, precisely the moment Charlotte's message had been sent. Mercer remained still beside the console while he reviewed the deeper supervision log attached to the entry. The palace protection system maintained layered records of every room inside the children's wing, including sensor activity, door access, and internal monitoring signals from the learning consoles themselves. If the system had marked Charlotte as unattended, even briefly, it meant one of those safeguards had failed or been interrupted. Mercer expanded the entry details and examined the sequence carefully. The door lock had never opened. The corridor cameras showed no movement outside the room, yet the supervision flag had switched from secure to unattended for those 12 seconds before correcting itself automatically. Mercer accessed the corridor tablet's sensor map connected to the learning suite. Normally, the room's digital console confirmed Charlotte's presence through the desk terminal she used for reading lessons.
If the terminal disconnected, the system could temporarily register the room as unsupervised until the signal returned. But the learning program activity report showed no interruption from Charlotte's desk device. The learning program had continued running without pause. That meant the unattended status had not come from her workstation. Mercer shifted his attention to the corridor tablet again. The only remaining supervision input for the room came from the hallway security panel itself, the console he was currently using. If that panel lost its monitoring handshake with the Palace network, even for a moment, the system could incorrectly classify the room as unattended until the connection restored. Mercer opened the panel's network log and scanned the most recent entries. At first, nothing looked unusual. The device had maintained a steady connection to the Palace security network throughout the evening. Then Mercer noticed a small line buried between two routine system updates. A silent configuration request had briefly accessed the corridor tablet's supervision permissions less than a minute before Charlotte's message was sent. The change had not triggered an alert because the request carried valid internal authorization credentials, but the adjustment had momentarily removed the hallway console from the supervision network before restoring it again seconds later. Mercer understood the implication immediately. For 12 seconds, the Palace protection system had believed Charlotte was alone in the learning suite without any active supervision node watching the room. That was exactly the moment Charlotte noticed the irregularity in the system faster than the Palace network itself, and she had sent a warning before whoever altered the supervision setting had time to return to the hallway console. Daniel Mercer kept his attention on the corridor security tablet as Mercer focused on the console while the command desk began reviewing the supervision log. The Palace lighting reflected softly along the polished floor, while the biometric door indicator beside him continued to glow green, confirming the room remained sealed and occupied. Inside, Charlotte's digital learning program still played faintly through the insulated door, the calm narration of the reading lesson drifting into the corridor in low tones. Mercer had already captured the deleted message fragment from the console buffer and preserved the altered supervision log entry before it could be automatically overwritten by the system's routine update cycle. Now he activated the encrypted communication channel built into the corridor tablet and opened a secure link to the Palace security command desk. "Command, this is Guard Mercer in the children's wing," he said quietly into the system microphone, requesting verification on a supervision anomaly in Learning Suite 3. A brief pause followed before the control desk responded through the console speaker. "Go ahead, Mercer." Mercer summarized the discovery with precise clarity. Princess Charlotte sent an encrypted message to the corridor console advising a manual check of the hallway tablet. Immediately after retrieving the message, I located a supervision log entry marking her suite as unattended for 12 seconds. The door never opened, and the learning console remained active. However, the corridor tablet shows a configuration request briefly removed it from the supervision network. On the other end of the line, the command desk operator paused, likely reviewing the internal logs Mercer had already forwarded through the tablet link. The Palace protection network rarely produced errors of this kind, particularly inside the children's wing, where every system carried redundant monitoring layers. "Stand by while we review the configuration record," the operator replied. Mercer kept his posture relaxed beside the door, his eyes moving between the security tablet and the quiet corridor beyond. Nothing appeared unusual around him. The cameras embedded in the ceiling corners remained steady, their lenses reflecting faint points of light from the hallway fixtures. The supervision panel itself showed no active alerts now. To anyone passing by, the wing would appear perfectly normal. Yet Mercer understood that even a short 12-second gap in supervision inside this section of the palace could not be ignored. The system was designed so that a royal child's environment was always monitored by at least 2 independent security nodes. If one node disappeared from the network, another should immediately compensate. The fact that Charlotte's console had detected the gap quickly enough for her to send a warning meant the disruption had been visible from inside the room as well. Mercer was preparing to request a deeper trace on the configuration request when quiet footsteps approached from the far end of the corridor. Mercer turned his head slightly as the approaching figure entered the pool of light beneath the ceiling fixtures. Princess Anne entered the corridor quickly, clearly responding to an urgent alert from palace security, accompanied by a single palace aide who stopped several meters behind her once they reached the learning suite entrance. Anne's presence in the children's wing at this hour was unexpected, but her expression showed the composed alertness of someone who had already received partial information about the situation. Mercer straightened slightly and inclined his head in respectful acknowledgement. "Your Royal Highness." Anne glanced briefly at the closed door to Charlotte's suite before focusing on the tablet in Mercer's hands. "I was informed there was unusual system activity in this corridor," she said evenly. "Explain." Mercer summarized the situation without exaggeration, presenting the message Charlotte had sent and the supervision gap that followed. As he spoke, he rotated the tablet slightly so Anne could read the preserved log entry for herself. The short line remained visible on the screen. Suite status, unattended, 12 seconds. Anne studied the entry carefully. "Inside the children's wing?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Mercer replied. "The supervision console here was briefly removed from the monitoring network through an internal configuration request." Anne's expression hardened slightly as she absorbed the implication. "And Charlotte noticed this herself?" Mercer nodded once. "She sent a warning message before the system completed its deletion cycle." Anne's attention shifted to the command desk voice now returning through the console speaker. "Control confirms the configuration request originated from within the palace network," the operator reported. "The command carried valid internal authorization credentials." Anne looked back at the tablet again, her gaze narrowing thoughtfully. "So someone inside the palace used legitimate credentials to remove a message sent by a child under royal protection," she said quietly. The corridor remained silent for several seconds as that conclusion settled into the situation. Finally, Anne turned toward Mercer again. "Notify the command desk that this wing is now under full security review," she instructed. Mercer immediately relayed the order through the tablet channel. On the other end of the connection, the command desk acknowledged without hesitation. Within moments, the palace network began isolating access permissions connected to the children's wing, freezing the log system so no further deletions could occur. Anne folded her hands calmly in front of her as the process began. "If someone attempted to erase a message from Charlotte's console, then we will find out who had access to that system and why they thought the palace would never notice."
The command desk began tracing the digital command that attempted to erase Charlotte's message. Daniel Mercer stood beside the hallway tablet as technicians isolated the request within the palace network. Daniel Mercer stood beside the hallway tablet while the command desk synchronized its trace with the wider palace network, isolating the exact digital request that had attempted to erase Charlotte's message. The biometric door indicator continued glowing steadily, confirming the suite remained sealed and occupied, while Charlotte's lesson program still played faintly inside. Across the tablet display, new system data began streaming from the Palace Cybersecurity Division. The erased message fragment Mercer had preserved was now linked to the originating command request that triggered the deletion. "Trace established," the command desk operator announced through the console speaker. The deletion command was transmitted from a portable administrative tablet connected briefly to the internal network. The command desk expanded the trace and transmitted the device identification beneath the log entry. The palace network required every administrative device to carry a registered identity signature tied to a specific department and authorized operator. Yet the identification number appearing on the screen did not immediately match any device assigned to the children's wing maintenance schedule. Mercer glanced down the quiet corridor while the command desk continued feeding updates to the tablet. At the far intersection, 2 additional guards had already taken up positions after receiving the earlier security review order from Princess Anne. Their presence blended naturally into the palace routine, ensuring no one entered the wing unnoticed while the investigation continued. The console display expanded to show the connection timeline for the unknown device. According to the network log, the tablet had connected to the palace system for less than 40 seconds before disconnecting automatically. During the short connection, the device issued the command that altered Charlotte's supervision record and attempted to erase her message she sent to the hallway console. Mercer leaned slightly closer to the tablet screen. Both commands had been transmitted with internal authorization credentials strong enough to bypass the system's normal alert thresholds. "Command," Mercer said calmly. "Confirm the device location when it accessed the network." The operator responded after a short pause. "Signal triangulation places the device somewhere inside the main palace network zone. However, the tablet disconnected before we could narrow the position further." Mercer understood the significance immediately. The palace network covered dozens of internal access points throughout the building, allowing authorized devices to connect anywhere within secure infrastructure zones. If the tablet had been active for less than a minute, the system would only detect the general area rather than the exact room or corridor where it was used. Mercer looked once more at the preserved log entries on the console. Whoever operated that tablet had connected just long enough to interfere with Charlotte's supervision status and erase the message she sent to the hallway console. The action was deliberate and precise. Within minutes, the quiet investigation expanded across the children's wing as additional palace guards repositioned discreetly along nearby corridors. Mercer watched the movement through the hallway cameras displayed on the tablet's monitoring interface, while the command desk coordinated with cybersecurity analysts deeper inside the palace security office. The objective was simple: determine whether the unknown tablet had been used intentionally to manipulate Charlotte's supervision status, or if the system interruption had been part of a broader digital intrusion attempt. Through the console speaker, a new voice joined the communication channel, one of the palace cybersecurity technicians assigned to the trace analysis. "Guard Mercer, we've cross-checked the device identification against all administrative tablets currently registered to palace departments." Mercer waited for the conclusion. "No match," the technician continued. "The device signature resembles a maintenance administration tablet, but the serial identity does not correspond to any tablet currently assigned to the children's wing." Mercer glanced down the quiet corridor while the command desk continued feeding updates to the tablet. At the far intersection, 2 additional guards had already taken up positions after receiving the earlier security review order from Princess Anne. Their presence blended naturally into the palace routine, ensuring no one entered the wing unnoticed while the investigation continued. The console display expanded to show the connection timeline for the unknown device. According to the network log, the tablet had connected to the palace system for less than 40 seconds before disconnecting automatically. During the short connection, the device issued the command that altered Charlotte's supervision record and attempted to erase her message she sent to the hallway console. Mercer leaned slightly closer to the tablet screen. Both commands had been transmitted with internal authorization credentials strong enough to bypass the system's normal alert thresholds. "Command," Mercer said calmly. "Confirm the device location when it accessed the network." The operator responded after a short pause. "Signal triangulation places the device somewhere inside the main palace network zone. However, the tablet disconnected before we could narrow the position further." Mercer understood the significance immediately. The palace network covered dozens of internal access points throughout the building, allowing authorized devices to connect anywhere within secure infrastructure zones. If the tablet had been active for less than a minute, the system would only detect the general area rather than the exact room or corridor where it was used. Mercer looked once more at the preserved log entries on the console. Whoever operated that tablet had connected just long enough to interfere with Charlotte's supervision status and erase the message she sent to the hallway console. The action was deliberate and precise.
Within minutes, the quiet investigation expanded across the children's wing as additional palace guards repositioned discreetly along nearby corridors. Mercer watched the movement through the hallway cameras displayed on the tablet's monitoring interface, while the command desk coordinated with cybersecurity analysts deeper inside the palace security office. The objective was simple: determine whether the unknown tablet had been used intentionally to manipulate Charlotte's supervision status, or if the system interruption had been part of a broader digital intrusion attempt. Through the console speaker, a new voice joined the communication channel, one of the palace cybersecurity technicians assigned to the trace analysis. "Guard Mercer, we've cross-checked the device identification against all administrative tablets currently registered to palace departments." Mercer waited for the conclusion. "No match," the technician continued. "The device signature resembles a maintenance administration tablet, but the serial identity does not correspond to any tablet currently assigned to the children's wing." Mercer glanced toward Princess Anne, who remained standing calmly beside the corridor wall as the investigation unfolded. Her expression remained composed, though the significance of the discovery was clear. If the device identification did not match any assigned equipment in the wing, then someone had introduced a tablet that the system recognized as legitimate, but which did not belong in this part of the palace. Mercer spoke again through the console channel. "Could the signature have been cloned from an existing device?" The technician answered carefully. "Possibly. The authorization credentials used by the tablet appear valid, but the device identity itself is unfamiliar. We're reviewing the authentication handshake now." Mercer returned his attention to the corridor display. The additional guards positioned at both ends of the hallway now ensured that anyone moving through the wing would be noticed immediately. No alarms sounded, and the palace environment remained outwardly calm, but the security network surrounding Charlotte's learning suite had tightened considerably. On the tablet screen, the trace map continued updating as analysts followed the brief network handshake created by the unknown device. The signal had originated somewhere within the palace internal infrastructure zone only minutes earlier. That meant the person holding the tablet had been physically present inside the building when Charlotte's supervision status changed and her message was targeted for deletion. The investigation now confirmed that the command had been issued from inside the palace network. Inside, Charlotte likely had no idea that the brief warning she sent to the hallway console had triggered a full network investigation across the palace security system. But the technicians analyzing the digital trace now knew something Mercer had already suspected from the beginning. The command that removed the supervision console from the network had not been a system glitch. Someone had connected a device to the palace network for less than a minute and used it to alter the digital protections surrounding a royal child. Once the corridor security positions were fully established and the palace command desk confirmed that the unknown tablet was no longer active on the internal network, Daniel Mercer received clearance to briefly enter Princess Charlotte's learning suite to confirm her safety and gather a clear account of what she had seen. The biometric panel beside the door unlocked under the command desk's authorization, and Mercer stepped inside with the calm professionalism expected of a royal protection officer. The room remained softly illuminated by the large digital learning display mounted on the wall, which still showed the paused reading lesson Charlotte had been following earlier. Charlotte sat at the study desk with her tablet resting beside the console keyboard, looking composed despite the unusual activity that had unfolded outside her room. Mercer closed the door behind him, but kept it slightly ajar so the corridor guards could still observe the interior if needed. "Your Highness," he said gently, maintaining a respectful tone, "I'm here to confirm everything is all right." Charlotte nodded calmly. "I'm fine," she replied, though her eyes moved briefly toward the door, as if remembering the earlier moment that had prompted her message. Mercer remained standing near the study desk, careful not to appear alarmed. "You sent a message asking a guard to check the hallway tablet," he said. "Can you tell me what made you send it?" Charlotte thought for a moment before answering. "I saw someone outside," she said quietly. Mercer listened carefully, keeping his voice steady. "Where exactly did you see them?" Charlotte pointed toward the wall beside the door, where the corridor console was mounted on the other side. "They were standing near the hallway screen," she explained. Mercer understood immediately that she meant the security tablet positioned just outside the suite entrance. From inside the room, the learning suite's narrow door window allowed Charlotte to see a portion of the corridor wall if someone stood directly in front of the console. "What were they doing?" Mercer asked. Charlotte replied with the calm precision of someone recalling a detail she had studied carefully. "They had a tablet in their hands," she said. "They were touching the hallway screen like they were connecting it to the tablet." Mercer felt a quiet confirmation settle into place. That description matched the exact activity the palace technicians had already discovered through the network logs. The unknown device had briefly linked to the hallway console and altered its supervision status before disconnecting. Charlotte continued explaining what happened next. "When I walked toward the door to see who it was, they looked up and left really quickly," she said. Mercer remained attentive as Charlotte finished describing the moment she noticed the person outside her room. "Did you recognize them?" he asked gently. Charlotte shook her head. "No, I didn't see their face properly," she said. "They turned away before I could." Mercer considered the detail carefully. Whoever had used the tablet had clearly not expected Charlotte to approach the door while they were working on the console. Her movement toward the entrance had likely interrupted the attempt to alter the system further. "What made you send the message?" Mercer asked next. Charlotte glanced briefly at the learning console on her desk. "I remembered that the guards sometimes check the hallway screen during patrols," she said, "so I used the console to send a message before they could change the system again." Mercer allowed himself a small nod of approval. Charlotte had recognized that something unusual was happening and had quietly alerted the nearest guard using the one communication channel she knew would reach the corridor console quickly. "That was very thoughtful," he said calmly. Charlotte looked relieved to hear that her decision had helped. "I wasn't sure if I was supposed to send messages like that," she admitted. Mercer reassured her gently. "You did exactly the right thing." Outside the room, the quiet activity of palace security continued as technicians reviewed the final traces left behind by the unknown tablet. Mercer knew that Charlotte's observation had provided something the system logs alone could not: confirmation that a person had physically stood in the corridor connecting a portable device to the security console outside her room. When Mercer stepped back into the hallway a moment later, Princess Anne looked toward him expectantly. "Charlotte saw the individual using a tablet connected to the corridor console," Mercer reported. Anne listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. The technical investigation had already confirmed the digital commands, but Charlotte's explanation now completed the sequence of events. Someone inside the palace had approached the learning suite corridor, connected a portable device to the supervision console outside the door, and attempted to alter the digital protection around a royal child before quickly leaving when the child herself came to investigate.
By the time Daniel Mercer returned to his position outside Princess Charlotte's learning suite, the palace command desk had already escalated the investigation to a full digital audit of the children's wing security network. The command desk transmitted the final analysis of the altered configuration request, but the quiet presence of additional guards at the far intersections made it clear that the area was now operating under heightened protection. Mercer stood beside the hallway security tablet as fresh diagnostic data streamed from the palace cybersecurity division. Princess Anne remained nearby,
her composed posture reflecting the seriousness of the situation rather than any outward alarm. Moments earlier, Charlotte had explained exactly what she saw. Someone standing at the corridor console with a tablet connected to the supervision panel outside her room. Now the technical teams were confirming precisely what that person had attempted to do. New details appeared on the console as investigators completed the system analysis. Mercer studied the report carefully while the command desk supervisor summarized the findings through the console speaker. Guard Mercer, investigators have confirmed that the tablet attempted to temporarily change the supervision status of Learning Suite 3. Mercer already knew part of this from the earlier trace, but the deeper explanation clarified the intent behind the command. The unknown device had not simply removed the hallway console from the network momentarily. It had attempted to create a short window during which the system would classify Charlotte's room as unsupervised. In the Palace Protection Network, that classification triggered a temporary shift in the monitoring rules governing door access. Under specific conditions, the system could allow authorized administrative devices to open a room marked as unattended without triggering the higher-level alerts normally required for royal quarters. Mercer looked briefly toward the closed suite door as the meaning settled into place. If the configuration change had completed successfully and remained hidden in the system logs, someone with the right device could potentially have returned later that evening and opened the room without immediately alerting the command desk. The Palace network was designed with overlapping safeguards to prevent exactly that scenario, but the unknown tablet had come surprisingly close to bypassing one of those layers. Mercer turned his attention back to Princess Anne as the command desk finished explaining the final detail. The deletion command targeting Charlotte's message had been issued seconds after the supervision change attempt. Whoever used the tablet had realized the child might have noticed the console activity and tried to remove the warning she sent before a guard could read it. Princess Anne listened to the command desk report with quiet concentration, her expression tightening slightly as the final pieces of the situation became clear. The corridor remained orderly around them, but the significance of the discovery had already shifted the palace security response from routine investigation to serious internal review. So, the tablet attempted to make Charlotte's room appear unsupervised, Anne said calmly, and then someone tried to erase the message she sent when she noticed it. The command desk supervisor confirmed the conclusion through the console speaker. Yes, Your Royal Highness, the deletion command failed because Guard Mercer accessed the hallway tablet before the system completed the purge cycle. Anne glanced toward Mercer with a brief nod of acknowledgement before returning her attention to the console. Freeze the full system log for the children's wing and begin reviewing every administrative device that connected to the palace network within the last hour, she instructed. The order moved the investigation beyond the corridor itself and into the deeper layers of palace infrastructure. Any tablet capable of issuing the commands detected in the system logs would have to carry internal authorization credentials, and those credentials were recorded each time a device connected to the network. Mercer understood that Anne's decision to personally appear in the corridor had changed the entire pace of the investigation. What might have been treated as a minor system irregularity instead had been escalated immediately into a full security review the moment it became clear a child's warning message had been targeted for deletion. The brief supervision gap, the attempted deletion command, and the preserved message Charlotte had sent. Mercer glanced again at the preserved message in the system archive. Check the hallway tablet before anyone else arrives. Charlotte had noticed the first sign of interference. Mercer had ensured the warning was preserved, and Princess Anne's arrival guaranteed the hidden command could no longer disappear inside the palace network logs. Mercer had ensured the message was retrieved before it disappeared, and Princess Anne's decision to intervene the moment she heard about unusual activity in the children's wing had forced the hidden command sequence into the open before it could vanish quietly inside the palace network logs.